time to move beyond the idea of companies that are governed by client-centricity. What would an account-based enterprise look like instead of a client-centric one? And how do CRMs put this problem into stark relief, giving you a rearview mirror when what you really need is headlights? Hi, I'm Courtney Baker, and this is AI Know-How from DeWolf, helping you reimagine your business in the AI era. As always, I'm joined by DeWolf CEO David DeWolf, Chief Product and Technology Officer Mohan Rao, and Nordlight CEO Pete Buer. We're also going to bring you selected clips from David DeWolf's LinkedIn Live with Brian Shea of Lucrum Partners on how to see risk signals hiding in your company's data. But first, Pete Buer joins us to break down some of the latest in AI news. Hey, Pete, how are you?
I'm good, Courtney. How are you?
I'm doing great. Another week, another story from Business Insider. They are, well, I guess they're crushing the AI beat here, Pete. BI reports that in 2026, Meta will be judging its workers based on how adept they are at delivering value using AI. Pete, this is a really interesting one. What's the takeaway here?
So another week, another corporate memo as well. So Meta's taking a formal corporate stance that AI is not optional. It's a core expectation of the work. They're going to assess your performance, at least in part, according to AI-driven impact. And they're going to give you tools for evaluating that impact as part of the performance review process. They're tools called MetaMate, and employees and managers, I guess, use it to understand the degree to which AI has been driving their productivity. On face value, of course, it's a good idea to align your evaluation methods and your rewards with what matters most to the business. And shoot, they're going so far as to back it up with tools to make the job easy. So in spirit, I'm on board. But there's always a catch to my stories. And if there's one here, I think it's about balance. We've all lived through or at least heard horror stories about how turning up the dial on one incentive causes some disaster to occur
Yeah.
on some other outcome. And I think we should be watching out for that story playing out here. So what would the risk be? Well, could unmitigated focus on AI-driven productivity cause quality problems? Could over-reliance on an AI-powered career management tool make career development an even emptier process than it already is in most companies? So takeaway for listeners, yeah, for sure, enable the heck out of your people with AI, but be deliberate about where the human touch is critical, both in the management of the work and in the management of careers.
You know, Pete, this is a really interesting one because it seems that in this AI era that actually human creativity, the value that only humans can bring really rises to the top as the most valuable asset. And so it's so interesting. As soon as you said that, when we overemphasize one thing, do we actually start to teach our teams, hey, don't practice your creativity. Don't practice the things that are uniquely human that you bring to this job. Only, and I'm sure they're not going to that extreme, but it is interesting what we may be losing in the pursuit of something that we're emphasizing so strongly.
100%. I think employees as workers in the business and as consumers of information are experiencing some frustration. I think we're seeing some backlash on
Yeah.
AI powered this, AI powered that, especially when it's autonomously generated content, for instance, that can't be trusted. And we have to make sure in order to guarantee the quality of our work, what we produce for customers and what we produce for our teams, that there's a human in the loop in the most important places to
Yeah.
ensure that we're on the right track and that it's good stuff.
It's so good. And I remember early in my career, I started a business. The name of it, Pete, was actually Practicing Creativity because I had this philosophical thing that we were all creative, but we have to practice it. And so just a reminder for everybody listening, take a few minutes today and just practice your own creativity. Pete, thank you as always.
Thank you, Courtney.
If being too client-centric is actually holding companies back, what approach should they move toward instead? I sat down with David and Mohan recently to talk about the account-based enterprise and why the concept may resonate for services companies. David, Mohan, welcome back. Okay, so today, listen, Mohan, good news. No one is going to ask me to
Why does only Mohan get good news?
Mohan, no one is going to ask me to reframe this because today this is David's framing for an episode. And so I think I'm going to knock this one out of the park, hopefully. See how I do.
Don't be surprised. He might reframe himself.
It happens more often than you think.
Okay. Well, let's see how this goes. Okay. So, David, feel free to chime in as I dig in here. But today, the concept, both of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with account-based marketing, ABM for short. And obviously, lots of companies use ABM. The whole idea is rather than just utilizing traditional marketing methods, they focus on very specific accounts that they believe they can win, and they only focus on them. And most organizations, they kind of stop there. They then say of themselves that they are a client-centric company, that it extends beyond just that effort with ABM, but into, let's say, their client success. But very few of them actually operate that way. So today, David, how was that frame first before I go further?
Great. I think you laid out enough for us to argue about. That's great.
Okay, perfect.
Love it.
So today I want to really explore what it means to be account-based, not just in marketing, but the entire enterprise. What would it look like if your organization, in some ways, it's kind of putting their money where their mouth is, when it comes to their clients. So
I think that's the fundamental question, Courtney, is
Yeah.
taking a step back and looking at some of these words we use that had really good intent in the first place, but I think have lost a little bit of their meaning, or maybe we have over-indexed, right? So take a look at where we're coming from. The slogan of being client-centric, customer-centric, right? It sounds great. In a lot of ways, it really is great. But when we say it, most companies are saying they're client first, right? And their entire intent is to serve their clients. And if they take care of their clients, then it will take care of everybody else. All these other things. We have this mindset of thinking client first. It's great. It's important. We should absolutely excel at serving our commercial partners who actually give us the economic value to sustain and to grow. But therein lies the problem, which is I think in some organizations that I have seen, we become so client-centric that we actually forget that there is a commercial relationship that needs to thrive as well. And what we actually should be doing is putting the client in the center of a decision-making process whereby we are stewards of the company's resources. How do we actually create holistic commercial relationships that are good for both parties, right? It's all about mutual economic benefit. How, as a business, do I provide enough value in the market that people acknowledge that and pay me for that, right? In order to create this enterprise that is able to support my employees and to accrue value to the world, right? And I think we oftentimes lose sight of the economic reality of the totality of an account. When I think of an account, right? So this is what I think the marketing world has done right. When I think of account-based marketing, it's not just we're going out and we're targeting a customer to give them all the value that we can. It is how do I actually give them, by focusing on them, give them enough value that they want to do business with me, right? What if our entire enterprise was run that way? What if I wanted to serve my clients so well that they wanted to do business with me, that they wanted to grow our relationship, that they wanted me to be viable and make a good, healthy profit off of our relationship because they want our business to be sustainable because we are that focused on the client. And I think it's that holistic mindset that I think it's time for us to reclaim and stop pretending like the only thing that matters is the client. It is very, very important, but it's not the only thing. We have to be sustainable in order to be able to invest in the client. And so I'm advocating for the account-based enterprise, not the client-centric organization.
Yeah, historically, many companies wanted to be this. And the reason they couldn't get there was not because they didn't have the right mindset or the effort to get there. In my view, it's all about the architecture.
Hmm.
You cannot be account based if you can't see the whole client. Like every function within your company needs to see the whole client. If you
Mhm.
cannot do that, it was historically impossible to do that. Even though you wanted to get there, always fell short. It was not about the effort, the mindset, or the culture, or the intention. It is all about the architecture and the possibility of something like this from an architecture perspective and your systems being able to support that.
When I think systems, Mohan, a lot of people automatically think about the technology systems, but that's one big part of it. I know you think even bigger than that. It is the holistic system, right? It's the principles, the processes, the technology, the measures, right? All of those things. And I think to that point, how often are we orienting towards a departmental KPI that is totally detached from that reality, as an example, right? So it's a holistic rethinking that you're advocating for.
That's right. I mean, it's a holistic thinking where when every team, every function sees the same truth, it's possible for the company to shift from being reactive to being more anticipatory so they can serve the client better.
Hmm.
David, could you do a little, I don't know, paint a little picture for us of what that looks like very tangibly today and what that would look like in a company that was doing this well?
Hmm. Yeah. So let's take as an example. I'm gonna pick on one of my least favorite types of technology, the CRM.
Uh,
um,
he does hate
CRMs,
CRMs. I will back that up.
like
He hates
Salesforce, HubSpot, these are great tools that have done a lot, but let's be brutally honest. What happens? They're not actually customer relationship management. And there's two fundamental flaws that I see. Right? Number one, they're mostly sales tools. They're actually for pipeline management more than anything. The vast majority of companies, as soon as that contract is signed, all the data goes out the window, right? And this leads to the second problem, which is it is actually typically activity that it's capturing, right? In HubSpot, it's great at the inbound funnel, and so it's clicks on a website. In Salesforce, maybe we're attaching a certain email that came in to trigger the next step. It's all about this pipeline. It's the customer, and they're front and center in the sale, and then all of a sudden, especially in professional services, we sign the contract and there's no context that has been captured in the sales process that's transitioned to delivery. And there's no context continually captured so that I know what's actually going on in this account. So I don't know how to serve them. And when I don't know how to serve them, I also don't know how to grow the account, right? So what we end up with is what is supposed to be a strategic relational business in services that's very, very transactional. It's about, hey, we handed it off to the delivery team, they're now delivering, and no longer are we these partners in a commercial relationship where I understand what they're going through and actually able to advise them to be helpful. And achieve their objectives. And oh, by the way, at the same time, that leads to more work that I can perform. And we create this commercial relationship that is able to expand and grow and drive the health of our business versus just a client services relationship where I can do work when they need work. One is very thin and it's not very sustainable. It doesn't lead to the type of exponential growth. The other one is healthy, robust relationships of true partners.
One thing that I feel like I see quite often, and something that, you know, we know that leadership and professional service firms need is the visibility on what's actually happening with their accounts. But the reality is there seems to be like a disconnect from it seems like it just becomes this departmental thing, and like they'll look at it like if there's something, as my 4-year-old would say, if there's some squabbling,
Your
apparently that's a
4-year-old
Bluey.
uses squabbling. That's
Yeah,
pretty
she's
advanced. I'm
guys,
impressed.
Bluey has an episode on squabbling. And so, yes, if there's some squabbling happening, the CEO pops in. But there's not this like rigor for the whole organization to be positioned towards
Mhm,
the accounts. It is episodic at best, in my
mhm,
experience.
mhm.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the fundamental problem is that CRMs capture activity. In that sense, they're really providing you a good rear view mirror when you actually need headlights. You need headlights to know what is happening next, and capture the context so you can make good decisions. And this context has to be across all functions in the company, and you're being very client centric. So this way, things are nipped in the bud before the client ever escalates. Right? That is sort of the time when that's the point where that you've moved from CRM to more of a relationship intelligence area. Relationship not only with the client, but even within your company, where you're all putting your efforts in making the client successful.
And how do you not just make the client successful, but the other part of that is how do you make your own business successful? Which I think oftentimes we don't talk about because we don't want the client to think that we're in business too. But business leaders know that everybody has to be successful in this ecosystem, and they actually want their partners to be successful if they're adding so much value that they can't live without them, right? And I think that, like, I love the phrase nipping it in the bud that you just used. It's not just for risk. It's actually knowing what your client needs so I can nip that in the bud too and get ahead of it and drive that next growth opportunity for my firm because it's good for them and it's good for us. So I'm not advocating for just going and doing any work that you're going to fail at, right? But if you have true intelligence and true context, you know how to not just serve your client, but to actually build a profitable partnership with your clients where you are in it for each other's success. And I think those are the strongest relationships where the fabric is very, very hard to rip apart.
So, David, what do you think is, for our listeners, if they're going to, I think everybody would be like, yes, I want this, but the reality is it is hard. It's challenging. So, what is the first thing they should think about as they're kind of maybe thinking about shifting how they think about their account?
Yeah. So one of the things that we touched on briefly, but I think is really important is tearing down the silos, right? We have way too much especially in services organizations, siloed operations where sales sells, delivery delivers, and account management or client services or whatever we're going to call it, actually manages the relationship. But the brutal reality is these things are integrated together, right? And there is not one department responsible for client success. Everybody is responsible for the ultimate account that exists. If we're going to be an account based enterprise, then just like in account based marketing, we go all in on focusing on that. The entire organization needs to go all in on focusing on that client and realize that Nobody can do it by themselves. It is an integrated picture, and everybody needs to have that in mind and be operating together. And it's going to take some of the dysfunction we see in organizations out, where people, oh, the NPS score dipped. Oh, that's the account manager's problem, right? Or that's the delivery team's problem. No, it's a very holistic thing where we have to look systematically and saying, what is failing in serving our client? Why are we not delighting our client and creating this partnership, right? Not winning the next opportunity is not sales' fault, right? Not delivering on a specific deliverable in time is not just delivery's fault, right? We need to holistically look at the system that we deploy to create these accounts and to serve these accounts and figure out how do we together serve them better to create a stronger, more economically viable commercial relationship.
Well, I think these are really good thoughts, especially as people are moving into 2026. Mohan, David, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You want more revenue from your clients. Of course you do. We all do. You also want stronger retention, better engagement, and clear insights into what actually drives loyalty. Good news, the latest enhancements to the KnownWell platform were built to help you achieve those very things. You can start a 30-day trial right now to see your own intelligence on the KnownWell platform. You can get started today at knownwell.com/30 days. David DeWolf joined Brian Shea of Lucrum Partners recently for a LinkedIn Live on how you can spot risk signals in your client accounts before they lead to churn. Here are just a few of the highlights from this discussion. Be sure to see the show notes for this episode for a link to the entire replay.
I want to welcome David DeWolf from KnownWell. Hey, David.
Hey, Brian. It's great to be with you.
So let's talk about signals. What's the one signal that surprised you most about predicting churn?
I go back to that surprise finding around relationships. It's not just about the executive sponsor or the economic budget owner. It's actually about the teams on the ground and are they productively doing work together, right? When you dive into that and the cohesion and the collaboration, and how much every single member of that team matters, that surprised me because over and over again, I used to champion hey, have we surrounded the account? And surrounding the account in my mind was, do I have enough of our employees connected with their executives? It wasn't about making sure there is a holistic relationship and every single level of it is healthy and we're weaving this fabric. That is by far the signal that surprised me the most. Most of this is intuitive and I wasn't surprised by it. That one I was actually surprised by.
Yeah. So, as I'm thinking about this, there's sort of two pillars here. There's the signal patterns, but then there's the what do you do with it, right? So,
Totally.
How are you guiding your peers, CEOs around and their executive teams around how do you access this stuff?
Totally.
How do you align? How do you act? Talk to me about that.
Well, I think as with all technology rollouts or data rollouts, right? It's all about, do you change behavior?
Yeah.
And change management is hard, let's be honest, right? So what I have found is that it's essential that you create structure and rhythm around that, okay? So I would start with, I think the CEO or the COO, depending on the firm and how operational the CEO is, has to define that operating system, that management system that drives the cadence of the business and has to prioritize not just my pipeline numbers that I review, right? We know in the sales world how structured it is and we manage by the data. But when 85% plus of your revenue comes from your existing accounts, that's a massive part of your revenue. Why don't we have the same rigor and discipline? And so you've got to have that senior level expectation setting around the management cadence of the business where you are regularly reviewing what is the health of each and every single account? What are the ones that were the biggest movers that are moving up and moving down? What are the fires going on? How do I address that? And you have to create this culture of accountability around moving the needle in terms of this health and actually taking action on it. There's different ways you divide that up, right? The COO, the CEO sets that cadence. You've got to have delivery coming in and managing the playbooks and the next actions. What are you doing? You got to have account managers that are building the fabric of those relationships, right? There's roles and responsibilities that need to be mirrored and matched into that cadence. But the cadence is so important, and driving that rigor and discipline. And really, we have found that the silos in organizations actually get in the way more than anything. So getting the cross-functional team together to deal with these and to execute is what's essential.
Yeah, gosh, those silos continue to bite our effectiveness. But that's so interesting how, sort of legacy organizations and the way that they're built get in the way of managing this cross collaborative, triage, right? It's triage work that we do.
That's right. And if you think about it, right, we claim to be customer centric. We claim to be client centric. How are you if you can't measure your relationship with that client and what's actually going on there, right? You can't actually make data-driven decisions against it. And one of the reasons that's been so hard historically is not only the natural language problem, it's also the system problem of, do we share the same worldview, right? Or do we have sales off working in Salesforce, but as soon as a contract signs, we don't manage the customer through that? Do we have, delivery systems that aren't integrated with that? So this challenge of bifurcated data and everybody has their own worldview, it's one of the reasons that even when you do self-report and have it on a spreadsheet, I dealt with this all the time. Sales told me one thing, delivery told me the other, and it was often opposite and conflict. I spent all of my time as a counselor asking questions to figure out who I believe, so I knew, how to drive the accountability. And so senior leaders become firefighters, right? They're always diving in to assess, reacting to the hottest fire that's going on. They're managing by gut, not by actual objective data, which allows you to get ahead and get proactive.
Let's talk a little proof point here. Give me an example of, let's talk about the customer success that Knownwell brings to your customers. Give us a story where a weak signal became a big save.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the bottom line, Brian, because this actually surprised me. Remember, we were first turned on to this problem through the signal of surprise churn, and then we found missed opportunities. But here's what's played out that I think is really, really compelling and explains a lot. We find that within 6 months of implementation, the number of healthy growing accounts within our customers expands by over 200%. That is a tripling. Wow. Tripling. Now, it does help to solve the churn problem, but we reduce at-risk clients by 25%, right? Here's what we found in that. The biggest driver for those at-risk clients is actually product market fit mismatch, where you're selling something that's not a perfect fit. So while we're able to reduce it and get those risks away, a lot of times what folks end up doing is also just strengthening their portfolio and say, this work we actually never should have taken in the first place, and it's draining resources of the firm. Let's focus on get this number, 73% of a service provider's clients are complacent. They're happy, you're doing good work, but I'm not a raving fan. The key to driving net revenue retention, which is why this matters, right? The growth of a services firm comes from 70% of it, incremental growth every year, comes from your account base, right? So net revenue retention, that's what matters. The key to driving that is taking these complacent, kind of happy clients and making them thriving, raving fans. So if you can take folks that you're already providing good service to, but now it feels like white glove service, their perception of quality is through the roof. They feel like your trusted advisor. It's actually not as hard of a lift as just saving this burning fire, right? You're actually taking folks that are already happy, but you never had the signals to know what to do. And you're driving that. And so that is the bottom line that really really matters. And then on top of that, we're also surfacing and finding growth signals. And we're able to identify opportunities that, again, hidden signals, right?
Yeah.
People don't even understand the information that they receive. So here's where I'll get to your example of very, very clear specifics, right? I've seen examples of where the platform has been able to identify, you just did an acquisition, right? And somebody in the firm knew there was an acquisition. Maybe it was in the news, but people aren't thinking strategically, said, oh, in this acquisition, this new acquired firm has this need that has been mentioned. And oh, by the way, you provide services for that for another client. Here's a cross-sell opportunity. Or there's a new product launch. There is an opportunity with this new product launch to be able to do this. And so we have found on average that we're able to identify at any given time between 3 and 4 very real opportunities that clients weren't even aware existed and weren't selling into. And now we're able to not just identify it, we're actually able to give them the play. What's the insight? What's the strategy? How do you approach that buyer? Who is the buyer to be able to go and execute on that growth play?
Brilliant, David. Thank you. Absolutely appreciate your time today. Appreciate your insights. And it's about time that we throw the spreadsheets away. They're terrifying.
Amen to that. Let's do it.
All right. Appreciate it, David.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks as always for listening and watching. Don't forget to give us a review on your podcast player of choice. And we'd really appreciate it if you could share this episode with someone you know would enjoy it. At the end of every episode, we like to ask one of our AI friends to weigh in on the topic at hand. So, hey, Gemini, nice new upgrade you got there recently. Today, we're asking the question, is it time to ditch client-centricity for the account-based enterprise? What do you think?
That's a big shift. I think moving from focusing just on the client to a full account-based approach in the enterprise is a smart move right now, especially as B2B relationships get more complex. It feels like a more holistic way to drive real business growth and partnership.
And now, you're in the know. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next week with more AI applications, discussions, and experts. Hey, if you made it this far in the episode, first of all, thank you. And second, we know that AI is changing all the time, and so we've got you covered. Here is another great episode for you to watch to stay in the loop on what's happening in AI and business. And second of all, we'd love for you to subscribe. You can do that right here. I've always wanted to do that, by the way. So do that now. That would be great.